Welcome to my Halloween spooktacular video for Doordash and gig delivery driving. Today, a little bit different. This is part one of part two, where we're going to look at 5 terrifying tales from gig drivers. Leave down below in the comments if you think they're real or what you would do in these gig delivery drivers situations. It's just going to be horror narration, guys. I'm going to run through 5 different tales for you guys. Sit back and enjoy. If you're out gig delivery driving tonight, turn down that Nicky Webster or S Club 7 on the radio and tune into these spooky tales as you drive down them dark, long roads in the night. Enjoy, guys. Before I talk about some of the other weird stuff that's happened to me during my career as a delivery driver, I need to elaborate on some things that people have commented on. In regards to delivering to 50 kilometers away, my manager has a tiered delivery charge in place for people who live further distance. If you're 50 kilometers away, it costs an extra $20, which most goes to me, but some does go to the store to get a pizza. This might seem outrageously high, but believe me, people really like their bloody pizza. We also have heated bags to keep the pizza in, to keep it warm during long deliveries. In regards to going inside people's houses, my manager allows this on a discretionary basis. If it feels okay, we are allowed to go in. With all of that out of the way, I'd love to share some more of the messed up things that happen to me seemingly regularly. I don't know if other drivers in different parts of the world have had same issues, but up here in northern Canada, there is a lot of really creepy and questionable stuff going on. I don't consider myself superstitious in any way, but some of the things I see, I just can't explain. Now, before anyone calls me out and says that I'm the only one experiencing these things, I'm not. Other drivers and I regularly hit the bar after shifts, and some other drivers are really messed up over some of the stuff they've seen. I know a guy who keeps a lamp on inside of his car at night because he's so terrified of the dark after something happened to him that he just won't tell anyone about. These things happen and are painfully real, and I cannot stress that enough. So several months ago, and I want to say December, I was working a close by shift from 10 at night to 5 in the morning, and my delivery sector was mostly the outskirts of town along the foothills and further north. Being December in Canada, there was about 6 inches of fresh snow, and only the highways and artery roads were ploughed properly. Driving the rest of the roads would be a death wish if you didn't have the proper gear and experience. Lucky for me, I have an all-wheel drive car, studded tyres and chains in case things go really south, and am one of those more senior drivers who's had the time on the roads. Being one of the few people with an all-wheel drive car, I was requested to take another delivery right to the edge of our delivery range, roughly 45 kilometers from the store. Since the weather was so bad, I called the number on my slip to confirm an address and that they still wanted the pizza. Getting the okay from what seemed like a cheery old lady, I set out down the highway, but not before stopping for my coffee, of course. Just before I left the city limits, I noticed something alarming. All lights, including the street lights, were out. Assuming a power outage due to the storm, I gave my boss a quick call on his cell phone to confirm it. Confirming that it is indeed a sector-wide power outage, I attempt to give the lady I'm delivering to a call. Trying to milk the apathy factor for an extra tip, I try and be as nice as possible. Hello, this is your delivery driver. I'm noticing there is a power outage and was wondering if you still wanted the pizza despite these terrible conditions. The old lady responded back, "Goodness dearie, I didn't think you would still deliver it. What excellent service from you and X company. If you could make it out here, I will definitely make it worth your while. I've got a backup generator lighting my house, so I shouldn't be hard to miss. Please take your time due to the horrible weather conditions." Knowing that I had hooked a substantial tip, I put my blinker on and continued back down the highway. One thing you guys need to understand was how dark it was. With it being later than midnight and not a single light on, the only thing illuminating my way were my subpar headlights. On top of that, it was snowing quite heavily. If my car were to die or my headlights were to go out now, I'd be completely screwed. Lucky for me, neither of those things happened, but something worse did. About 10 kilometers down what I can only assume was a dirt road underneath the mountains of snow in the middle of nowhere, I came across a car in the middle of the road with its hazards on. The car was diagonal across the road, and from its tracks I could tell it had tried to stop suddenly and lost control. Throwing my hazards on and getting out, I attempted to survey the scene. Moving about 20 meters from the car, I could not see any signs of life and noticed that the driver's side door was swung open and snow was piling inside the car. What alarmed me the most was what looked like blood on the inside of the window and all over the steering wheel. Upon clearing the snow from inside the car, it was obvious that there was a pretty brutal accident here, as there was blood all over the driver's side. My mediocre first aid training kicked in. My first response was to call 911 and get an ambulance out here. Pulling out my cell phone, the most cliche thing happened to me. There was no cell service. Obviously, there's no bloody cell service, I screamed. I'm out in the bloody boonies. After having my little meltdown, I decided to see if I could see any tracks or something to lead me to this obviously injured person. At this point, I had completely forgotten about the delivery and was pretty intent on helping whoever screwed up out here in the boonies. The chance of another car coming all the way out here this late was slim to bloody none, so this was on me. Using my delivery driver sleuthing skills, I managed to deduce a few things. This person obviously hit something really, really, really big, like a moose or a large bear. The front of his car was almost entirely caved in, and both his wheels were going opposite directions. No way this thing was going anywhere. Drawing on past experience, I actually couldn't think of anything that would do so much damage to a car like that. Seeing a small trail of blood leading up the road, I assumed he probably went walking to look for help. Now this was where I made my first mistake. I followed the trail of blood on foot. Wanting to play the hero, I bundled up and set out in the storm with a small LED flashlight that made decent light. At this point, I wasn't even thinking about my safety. I was concerned with whoever had injured themselves in that accident and getting them to safety. After about 5 minutes of walking, I realised that I'd screwed up majorly as a singular thought came through my mind. What if whatever this driver hit was still out here? Judging by how big the impact on the car was, I can only guess that it was a grizzly bear or something unknown much larger. Dealing with a wounded animal in the middle of winter was not something my pay grade covered. After my moment of clarity, I decided my best bet was to get back to my car and get back to cell service and call 911. Not even after I'd taken 10 steps back towards my car, I heard what sounded like an entire tree being torn from the ground. The noise was absolutely deafening and threw me into a wild, frantic panic. I started sprinting back to my car but kept getting slowed down by the fact my legs could not coordinate with each other. After sprinting about 5 steps, I ate shit hard. I tripped face first into a snowbank and just laid there, trying to recollect myself and just get a bearing. Just as I was about to get up again, I heard it. I heard what sounded like heavy breathing coming from just out of visual range. To top it off, the noise was coming from towards the accident scene and my car. At this point, something felt terribly wrong. That laboured breathing sounded more animal than human, and was far too loud for any human to make. Being scared shitless, I literally could not move out of the snowbank. After what seemed like an eternity, the breathing got louder and louder, until suddenly I saw whatever was making that terrible noise. Whatever that thing was, it had to be standing a minimum 8 feet tall. Yes, that's correct, 8 feet tall. It was bloody standing. It was running on 2 feet, but every couple of steps, it would stumble and start running like a bear. On 4 legs, it had a sort of a loping gait that reminded me almost exactly of a bear, but then it would get on 2 feet and start running like a human. It was also entirely covered in thick white fur, and would have been almost impossible to spot had it not been covered in blood. Whether or not it was its blood or the drivers of the cars, I never stuck around to find out. Whatever that thing was too distracted to see me, and it sprinted right past me down the middle of the road, still breathing heavy as ever. After what I thought was a solid 10 minutes, I forced myself out of the snowbank and sprinted back to my car. When I got back to my car, all 4 of my doors were wide open and the pizza boxes were strewn all over the road. Not even thinking about the pizza or the delivery, I drove straight to the police station to report what happened. Officially, the police report states the driver of that car collided with a large bear and that the bear dragged him off into the woods and devoured him. They never found his body, but they did find what appeared to be a portion of his spine almost 80 kilometers from where the accident happened. It was a really big thing in our town. People spent weeks searching for him. Apparently, he was the distant second cousin of the elderly lady I was supposed to deliver to, but that part didn't surprise me. Most of the redneck folk out that way are partially related to each other. What really messed me up about all this is that the police and conservation officers killed almost every bear in a 50-kilometer radius and examined the contents of their stomach. None of the bears killed had any human flesh in their guts, and the report states that the only thing big enough to cause an accident of that caliber is a large bear. Whatever that thing was that the driver hit, it's still out there, and I hopefully never see it again. Carl is on the way. That was the message I received at 12:33 a.m. yesterday. I was playing PlayStation while my girlfriend cooked bacon in the kitchen. Yes, we were eating bacon in the middle of the night. She was singing a song about it, set to the tune of Def Leppard's Pour Some Sugar on Me. Well, you know she's always writing these mundane parody songs. Stupid, I know, but it always cracks me up. My stomach was already rumbling when my phone dinged. We have a really small house out in a St. Louis suburb, and we have no oven fan, so the smell of bacon was everywhere. My mouth was watering. I looked back down at the message. Carl is on the way. I was confused for a moment, but I came to a logical conclusion. Amy, you ordered pizza too? Are you trying to make me fat so I can't cheat on you? She poked her head out into the living room. Pfft, like you could ever get another woman. But no pizza, just bacon. Why do you ask? Well, I said to her, I just got a text from some pizza place or something. It says Carl is on the way. Well, Carl is going to have to bring a pizza if he's hungry, because we only have like 5 pieces of bacon, and I'm eating at least 4. She turned back to the kitchen, and I was confused. But part of that was due to the copious amount of weed I'd smoked while waiting for my game to download. I knew that message was a simple mistake. I knew that things like this happen all the time, probably, but something was off. I order a lot of delivery food. Hey, I smoke a lot of pot, and most corporations send texts from a 5-digit number, but this one was 8 digits long. 8543268, and then a final digit that I didn't recognize. It was like a 9, but with a vertical line through it, the sort of digit you'd see in one of those online creepy text generators. You could chalk that up to an issue of the restaurant's delivery system, I guess, but that wasn't doing anything for my anxiety. Alright, bacon's done, Amy yelled from the kitchen. You want toast? Eggs? I'm already cooking, let me know. I turned to respond. Yeah, I'll... My phone dinged again. Carl is in your neighborhood and will arrive shortly. Now I was annoyed. Oh, for Christ's sake, I said. I'm going to be getting these notifications until Carl drops off that damn pizza, and now I want pizza. Amy laughed. Well, no pizza, only bacon, and you'll only get like 2 more messages at most. Settle down, dude. You're really not appreciating the late night bacon party experience. Oh, yeah, I said. You're right, but you're all so annoying, so... Another ding. Carl is at your door. Man, Carl's fast, I said. What delivery place texts you when the guy is there? Wouldn't he just knock? Probably a COVID thing, Amy said. The knocking started as soon as the words were out of her mouth. 3 hard, almost mechanical knocks. Hey, Amy said. You got your wish. There's pizza too. Just don't let it ruin your bacon appetite. Or maybe the pizza will have bacon on it too. Again, I was quite stoned, and I am the type of person who gets paranoid easily. But something in me wanted to lock the door and barricade myself in the bedroom and keep the lights on until the morning. Granted, part of me always feels that way, but something was not right. I shook off that feeling, but I wish I hadn't. I got up, dusting crumbs off my shirt and preparing to interact with another human being. Something I definitely didn't want to do at that time of night. I looked through the window, expecting to see a middle-aged, underpaid man in a Domino's shirt. There's no one here, I said to Amy. Yes, there is, pothead. The dude just knocked. Amy walked over from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an old apron she used to wear when she cooked. It didn't matter whether she was cooking something that actually required an apron. Bacon isn't rocket science. She always wore it and never washed it. That always drove me crazy. She tried to peer out through the top of the door, like where I was looking out at our empty porch, but she was just too short. Oh, come on, she said, exasperated. He's probably standing right up against the door. The poor bastard is working at midnight. Don't make him stand around. Her hand reached towards the doorknob. No, don't, I sputtered, but the door was already open, and nobody was there. Huh, Amy said. I guess you're not a lying idiot. You're still a regular idiot though. Do you think he realized that? And another ding came from my phone. I didn't look right away. Instead, I slammed the door and turned to my girlfriend. You shouldn't have done that, I said. Why? She said, crossing her arms. Is there a gang of satanic Domino's rapists I don't know about, or are you just worried about talking to a stranger? Well, the second one, I said, but this isn't right. The number in the phone is just not normal. The messages are too frequent, and why would a delivery driver with the wrong phone number go to the right address? Okay, no more medical grade pot for you, Amy said, rolling her eyes. You're going back to the ditchweed with me. Look at the numbers, I said, thrusting my phone towards her, feeling like some sort of conspiracy theorist. She rolled her eyes again as she unlocked my phone, then her face dropped. Oh, okay, she said. Now that is freaky. The numbers are all wrong, I said, strangely excited that she was finally taking this seriously. Like, where do you enter a 9 with a line through it on a normal phone? I've never seen that character before. It's like bad mojo number. I hate that number. I don't give a crap about that, Amy said softly. Look. She handed back the phone. Carl is in your house and will arrive shortly. My stomach dropped, but Amy was starting to laugh. Oh man, someone is getting fired for this stuff, she said. I've worked in databases before. It's a database error or a text entry error, or you didn't work with databases, I cut her off. She said, I worked at that florist shop and they had spreadsheets, which are a type of database, she said sheepishly. Anyway, dude, Carl is not in the house right now. This is just what happens when big, faceless corporations try to interact with real humans. They screw up, scare us, and disappoint us by not bringing us surprise pizzas. So chill, dude, eat bacon, drink a beer, play your game. You are freaking out way too hard right now. Ding! My phone went off again. Carl is in the kitchen and will arrive shortly. Amy grabbed the phone out of my hands, the veneer of her calmness disappearing instantaneously. Her eyes darted over the text, then to the kitchen, then back to the phone. She definitely wasn't laughing now. We slowly walked to the kitchen together. I didn't feel great about that. Really wanted to do the whole hide in the bedroom thing, but I knew that it'd be a hard sell, and I definitely didn't want to leave Amy alone. As we turned into the room, I felt a wave of relief. Then, panic. There was nothing in the kitchen. I don't mean to write nobody was in the kitchen. I mean nothing was in the kitchen. The bacon, the bread, and the eggs that Amy had laid out for the late night bacon party had vanished. No sign of them whatsoever, no crumbs, nothing. Amy looked at me with wide eyes. I swear, if this is one of your screw-loose friends trying to... It's not, I said, slowly looking around the room. I have no idea what the hell is happening right now. Ding! My phone went off again. This time I didn't look at my phone. I had a pretty good idea of what the text said. Carl is in your refrigerator. If not Carl, something was in there. We heard a screeching sound, slightly muddled and contained by the fridge, then frenetic clawing, like a raccoon going through trash, but much, much faster. It was angry, violent. Then, almost as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Before I could grab her, Amy ran over to the fridge and threw open the door. Nothing there. No food wrappers, not even the 3-year-old box of baking soda we kept in the side door. We're getting the hell out of here, Amy said. She didn't wait for me to respond. She didn't have to. I grabbed my keys from the kitchen table as we ran to the front door. As we made our way to my car, I noted how cold it was. I can't say for sure whether or not it was unseasonably cold. I rarely go outdoors at midnight in November, but it felt like I was breathing broken glass. And maybe I was focusing too much on my breath because I didn't notice what had happened to my keys until I tried to put them in the ignition. The key was bent at a right angle, not snapped off, which would have made more sense. It was playing with us. I held the key up to Amy. What's plan B? Jesus, crap. Okay, let me think. But there wasn't time for that. Ding. My phone went off again. Carl has arrived. I read it. My hands were shaking, and I imagined my face was pale. Amy knew immediately, and this happened so quickly. She doubled over, letting out an anguished shriek. She felt it before I saw it. Her stomach, there was something in her stomach, and it was moving. Her face was pure fear, but she contorted the edges of her lips to attempt a calm smile. That was Amy. She was always the strong one. Honey, she said, I love... And then she was screaming. The tearing sounds were animal, just mechanical, vicious and sadistic. Blood covered my face, the dashboard, the roof, organs and guts everywhere. And the panic set in, ramped up, and just kept ramping up until I was screaming with a cracked, inhumane voice. I kept screaming as her scream stopped, as she slumped over in the seat, as it crawled out of her. Jet black skin glistening and wet, black teeth, sharp hands. It moved quickly, jutting out a long purple tongue to lick the blood off its razor fingers. I didn't see any eyes, but it turned its head towards me, and I knew it saw me. It sneered a wide smile, a macabre mockery of Amy's last moments. The panic became all-encompassing until, mercifully, everything stopped. I woke in the morning. Well, not woke. I was suddenly there in my car, my eyes wide open and my muscles tense. The seat next to me was ripped to shreds, but there wasn't a drop of blood anywhere. Not even on me. Later, I wondered whether the thing had crawled on me during the night, sucking each drop out of my clothes and licking my skin. I walked inside in a daze, just hoping to see Amy standing there with her bed hair and sleep in her eyes, ready to lecture me about the dangers of medicinal cannabis. But she wasn't there, of course. But I looked everywhere anyway, under the bed and in every closet, hoping dumbly for anything concrete that would stop the snarling sense of dread that was slowly spreading through my body like a warm cancer. That was yesterday. Amy is not here. I know where she is. or at least where she was, and I am out of food. I need to eat, then call the police, then call her family, then probably go to prison. I don't care much about any of that. Whatever happens now is unimportant. I may have gone insane and killed my girlfriend, or maybe everything happened exactly as I remembered it. But either way, I simply cannot live here anymore. In fact, I probably can't live anywhere. I know it'll come back. I hope that it comes back for me. It's already taken everything I had, but I suspect it will wait until it sees an opportunity to twist the knife further. It likes to play with its food. I've kept my phone off today, but I know I couldn't put things off forever. I powered it on to call the police and saw a single unread text message. How did Carl do? Give feedback and get free deliveries for friends and family. Do not deliver to 166 Lower Creek Road. Please, please, if you do DoorDash, do not deliver to 166 Lower Creek Road. If you get that address, please cancel immediately. Ignore the high tip. It's not worth it. I haven't been dashing long. I think it's been 2 months since I started, and now I'm writing this from the trunk of my car. Why am I writing this instead of calling the cops? Well, because I've already called 911, and the dispatcher laughed and hung up. According to her, 166 Lower Creek Road doesn't exist, and they get a prank call about that address every other night. Hell, she even said that Lower Creek Road has been closed for years. So I'm writing my story on here because you all will believe me. I was in the last 10 minutes of a 4-hour shift with DoorDash. When I saw that it was 10:50 PM, I decided to call it a night and head home. I then attempted to end my dash, but a new order popped up. Go to McDonald's. The pay showed $50. The pay is usually $10 at the highest, so I couldn't say no. I was already close to McDonald's, and it didn't take long to get there. Once inside, the cashier informed me that there wasn't a DoorDash order with the order number I had. I looked at the items ordered, and it was just ice water and nothing else. $50 pay for an ice water. Whatever, I'll take it. The cashier laughed at the order and handed over a large styrofoam cup of water. She informed me that they get an order like this every other night. As I walked back to my car, I felt very weird about this order. My gut told me to cancel, but I had already left the store with the item. The delivery address was only 3.5 miles out, and I reminded myself of the high payout, that huge tip, money that I really needed. So I pulled out onto the highway and made my way to Lower Creek Road. In no time, the GPS had me on a heavily wooded dirt road. It was very curvy and hard to navigate in the dark. My paranoia had me seeing things out of the corner of my eyes. I pressed on. After what felt like an eternity, the GPS said aloud, "Turn left onto Lower Creek Road in a quarter mile." Once at the road, there wasn't any road sign, but I made my way left anyway. "Your destination will be on your right in 1 mile, the GPS said. Off the bat, I noticed none of the mailbox numbers started with a 1. They all started with a 6, and if the road was like any other, then the actual address of my destination was going to be 666 Lower Creek Road. Now, I'm not religious or superstitious, but the idea that the address was actually 666 made me feel even more worried. All the homes on the road looked very run down and deserted. I was now only about 400 feet from my turn, and I can see an old rusty mailbox at the end of the driveway. Sure enough, the numbers on the mailbox read 666. The GPS sung out that I was at my destination, and then the DoorDash app read off the delivery instructions. "Leave at my feet, do not disturb." Those words chilled me. Usually the directions were a simple "leave at door" or "hand to customer." I slowly pulled down the driveway, which was fully surrounded by thick undergrowth and large trees. The little dirt road finally gave way to an opening. There was no house in the clearing. Sitting right in the middle of the opening were what seemed to be 3 men. They were sitting on lawn chairs in a semicircle. They were illuminated by a blue light that was being emitted from the ground by what looked like a projector. They all had their hands up in the air and were looking directly into the blue light. The scene made me so nervous that I began to feel nauseous. I got out of my car and slowly walked towards them. I've never walked so slowly and quietly in my life. I didn't want them to notice me at all. Once I reached them, I could tell they were all completely naked. The man in the middle had a small box in his lap, and smoke was coming from the box like something was smouldering inside it. There was a strong smell of burning hair around them. The only noise was the hum of the projector. I approached the man closest to the road and carefully tried to set the cup of ice water at his feet. My hands were shaking too badly, and I dropped the cup, spilling water all over his feet. But none of them had any reaction. I promptly stood up and walked back to the car as fast as I could. My heart was beating out of my chest. When I got within 5 feet of my car, I looked back towards the men. Only one of them remained in his seat. The other 2 were gone. For a moment, everything felt still, and then the man's head snapped in my direction. He stood immediately and started sprinting towards me. I turned quickly to get into my car, but what I saw stopped me completely. The other 2 men were sitting in the driver and passenger seats, both of them staring forward. I heard the man's footsteps closing in from behind me, and before I could react, he tackled me headfirst into my car. The impact was violent, and I immediately felt blood running down my face. As I pleaded, the man dragged me to the lawn chairs. He threw me down in the middle chair and dumped whatever was burning in the small box over my head. The embers burnt into my scalp. I began to scream, and the man grabbed my face and forced me to stare into the blue light. My eyes began to get very heavy, and I couldn't keep them from closing. When they opened, I was no longer in the middle of the woods at night. It was now daylight. I was now high in the mountain and seated in front of a massive opening in the side of a mountain. Carvings were all around the outside of the opening. The carvings depicted faces with their mouths agape. The men were seated beside me. All 3 hummed in unison. The opening gave way to a large pit that seemed to be forever deep. A large gust of wind pushed out from within the mountain before the air was sucked back into the opening forcefully. It was like the mountain was breathing. Each exhale pushed me away. Each inhale pulled me closer and closer to the pit. My eyes widened as I realized it wasn't the mountain breathing, but that something very large down inside the mountain was the source of the air. Something very massive, something very alive. Just the thought of the unidentified being made me want to scream out in madness. Then my fixation on the abyss was broken by a buzzing and vibration in my pocket. My phone was ringing. This broke my trance, and I realized I was back in the woods in the middle of the night. I looked around me and realized that the 3 men were still in a meditative state as they looked into the blue light. I jumped from the chair and started a dash for the car. I crashed into the driver's side door and dug for my keys. Nothing. They were gone. I looked towards the men and noticed they were now walking towards me. I noticed my trunk was open, so I hopped inside before slamming it down. That's how I ended up in the trunk. I'm laying here with no hope. I just want you to know to never deliver to 666 Lower Creek Road. Also, there is something in that mountain. It's alive, and it wants us all. I'm not too ashamed to admit that the advancement of technology and our ever-increasing ease of access to it has made me a little lazy. I can't be the only one. So many of the things we used to need to put pants on for are now right at our fingertips. Want some groceries? Boom. Postmates or Instacart will hand deliver anything you want from the store. Want some greasy fast food, but you don't want to wait in line while the person in front of you has to feed 300 people? Well, get someone from Doordash or Grubhub to go through that nonsense for you. Need to get somewhere but your car is in the shop and the public transportation is the absolute worst? Well, jump right into an Uber or a Lyft. Well, for these you might still want to consider throwing some pants on. That is just scratching the surface. New ones are popping up nearly daily, trying to find their niche in the market. Not to mention you can just order almost anything that exists in the world from Amazon. It's only a matter of time before they figure out trans-dimensional gateways and you can grab anything you want from any reality. So it was fairly easy for me to fall into this trap of spending a few extra dollars to give myself some convenience. I'm not rich by any means, but when it's 9 and I just don't feel like cooking or going out, I can turn my phone on and can get virtually whatever I want to eat. Within this market, Doordash is the trap I fell hardest into. It was never much more expensive than taking care of it myself, and other apps like Grubhub didn't offer as much variety. It'll be at least once a week that I'll watch that little car icon getting closer to my house, stomach rumbling in response. As much as I love the app though, I won't be using it anymore. Like I said, almost every week I order food, but 2 weeks ago I suffered a pretty serious injury during a car crash. One that I'm still recovering from. So all these apps that before acted as a means of convenience now become something of a necessity as I can't drive or leave the house. I, of course though, wasn't ordering food every day. I wish that was the kind of money I had though, but when the pain was bad and I wasn't willing to cook, I didn't hesitate to order. I had used the service enough to get embarrassingly familiar with some of the drivers. So I first noticed things were a little off when Martha, a woman I talk to often, popped up as my driver, which was no surprise. The surprise came when I was alerted that my food had arrived. I made my way through the house, slowly due to my injuries, and upon opening the door, it wasn't her. Instead, I peered into the bright blue eyes that were shaded by an orange baseball cap. The man that stood in front of me lifted the bag of food and flashed a smile. Cautiously, I lifted my arm out and grabbed the plastic. Hearing the bag wrinkling during the transaction, I attempted to look beyond the broad delivery man. I could see Martha's car by the curb and her familiar silhouette in the passenger seat. The man noticed my nervous gaze and informed me that she had injured her leg. He looked at the cast on mine and gestured that I and she had that in common before wishing me a good day and walking away. I tried to wave at Martha, but assumed she might have fallen asleep when she didn't return the gesture. She was an older woman after all. Not much thought was put into it at that time, and any concerns I might have had were wafted away by the warm odour lifting off the bag. Pulling the plastic handles, my order gift was revealed to me. When I'm feeling down, nothing cheers me up more than a well-made steak and cheese. As the hefty sub was freed from its sleeve, I heard something fall on the floor. The sound was fairly distinct, and the picture in my senses matched perfectly with what laid on the carpet. A shining gold link bracelet. Leaning over, my fingers wrapped around the metal that was heated from the sub. With an open palm, I observed the jewelry to make sure it wasn't mine, but I didn't notice anything on it. Quickly, I opened the app and contacted customer service. They got back to me before I could get one bite in. What followed was a fairly brief conversation between me and the representative. My conclusion was that it belonged to Martha, and when she made sure all the food was there, it dropped off her wrist. The rep told me that she would contact the driver and get back to me when they could take further steps. So I let that be that and went on to eat my food. Nothing was wrong with it other than it being a little bit colder than it should have been. The place was only a few minutes away, but I was hungry, so I barely noticed it. The following 2 days I managed, with the help of some pain pills, to make my dinners, but when the next day came around, I went on Doordash once again. I ordered some food from a local Chinese place and saw that Martha was once again delivering my food. Customer service never got back to me, so I figured I would just return it then. So when I swung my front door open again to meet and greet her, I was a little thrown off when I was met by the same man again. Even though I was taken aback, I pulled the bracelet from my pocket and held it out towards him. His face scrunched up as I explained that it must have fallen off Martha's wrist a few days ago. He stared at me for a moment, and I watched his mouth repeating the letter M, before his eyes went wide with realization. With a laugh, he replied that Martha wanted me to have the bracelet. As he spoke, I couldn't help but notice something poking out of the bag of food that he was holding. It prompted me to assert that I would like to thank Martha for the gift. His glance shifted quickly from me to the car running by the curb. When his body twisted to look back, I noticed the car wasn't Martha's. Somehow, over the rumblings in my abdomen, I was able to feel my heart thudding against my chest. When his bright eyes locked onto mine again, he explained that he was just running Doordash orders for her so she could keep making rent. Look, it sounded plausible, but the longer the words sat with me, the stranger they became. Not so much what he said, but how it was said. Like someone who was having trouble remembering a movie script, so they just filled in the blanks. With my nerves sitting firmly on edge, I told him to thank her for me and quickly grabbed the food. My goodbyes were offered through an ever-shutting door, and only with the click of the lock did my heart begin to settle. Part of me was in overdrive, attempting to convince myself that I was just the one overreacting. It got harder to do though as I reached into the plastic bag covered in drops of condensation, and I wrapped my fingers around what had set me off. I had ordered from that place a few times, and I was pretty damn certain no orders, DoorDash or otherwise, had come with a rose before. My intention wasn't to hurt Martha's ability to make money, but I was getting nervous and contacted support again. The person who responded to me acted just as confused as I was. They said they couldn't give me any specific or personal details, but Martha's account had some suspicious patterns. I'm sure the individual wasn't even supposed to say that much, but was instead just looking out for me. The person said they'd continue to look into it and told me to contact them again if Martha ever became my driver. After the second incident occurred, I had no intentions of ordering from DoorDash again. I talked to a few friends about the incident over the next few days. I cooked food for myself even on the rough days and waited, hoping their customer service would alleviate my nerves. When I calmed down almost a week after receiving the rose that was packed in with 2 servings of orange chicken, I fell getting out of the shower. Pain radiated intensely through my body. I went from scorching hot water to a blinding burn pulsating from my injured leg, and any thought of dinner I was about to make was washed away. Nervously, I pressed through a list of restaurants and fast food joints on DoorDash, picking through any new additions to the lineup. I decided I would order something from far away. Both of Martha's orders were pretty local, so I figured if I broke the pattern, there'd be no problem. My food was ordered, a burger and some fries from someplace I didn't even know existed, and I waited until a dasher confirmed my order. The screen flickered and I let out a sigh when I saw the name Marcus appear on the screen. All I had to do was wait and kick back with a handful of pain pills, and I would be chowing down in no time. I had nearly fallen asleep when my phone buzzed to alert me that my food had arrived. It was running early, something I saw as a blessing at this time. I hobbled over to the door, assisted by the crutches under my arms. Clumsily, I turned the handle and pulled the door open. Bright blue was all I saw, like my vision had tunneled into those piercing eyes. My hand pushed to close the door, but it was hard to put any real force behind it in my state, and his hand easily stopped my attempt. He smiled and said he was worried that he scared me, explaining that he was Martha's grandson. He went on to tell me that she had gotten sick and the hospital bills started piling up, so he started driving for her. Soon she had to stay at home, and when he last delivered to me, customer service contacted him after. They said he had to make his own account if he wanted to keep driving because people are put off when the driver doesn't match. The words were smooth, like he sat outside my house and practiced them to sound more natural than last time. He went on to admit that he just thought I was pretty, so he was nervous and the flower was just a silly misstep. Such a genuine smile was contorted by the words coming out of his mouth, and I let my guard down. I returned to his smile and a laugh broke out between the two of us as I went over how ridiculous the whole thing was. When there was enough silence to do so, he took a look at the gleaming metal crutches and offered to set the food down inside for me. No flowers this time, he joked, lifting the bag to my eye level. With a nod, I backed away from the door and allowed him to begin stepping inside. I'm not invincible against a nice smile and blue eyes, and I felt bad for being so suspect on the guy. He asked where I wanted the food, and I pointed to the kitchen counter. As he started walking towards it, I felt my pocket buzzing and awkwardly reached around the crutches to get my phone. The walls of my living room felt like they were closing in when I read the text I had received from my friend. I had told her about the Doordash incident and had made her curious, so she looked up Martha's name. She came across a recent news article with the name Martha in it. An elderly woman was found deceased in her car near a public park, but the article wasn't mainly about Martha. They were using her death to compare with another individual that was found dead just the day before. My hand nearly cracked the screen when I read the name of the recently deceased man. Marcus. "You okay?" The voice that was once smooth as butter, the voice just a minute before that had calmed me down, sounded like the devil himself. I didn't move my head, but my gaze shifted to the stranger standing in my living room. I thought it was odd that he wouldn't have tried to put himself between me and the door, but once he saw my crutches, it must not have concerned him. With trembling lips and a bubbling ire, I commanded him to leave my house. He just laughed, not like he did when we shared a laugh. This was something else entirely. "Come on, I just got here," he replied. His voice was so in control. I barely had time to register his intentions when I felt a sudden pressure on my face. There was no warning or wind-up, just his fist slamming hard against my nose and me falling against the door, shutting it. My body crumbled to the floor, legs so completely unable to support my weight. All I could do was look up at him. He had his hands over his face, and with shaking breath, he pulled them down, stretching his features. "I'm sorry, I've been waiting for this," he said, flashing that smile again, but I knew what was behind it then. It was warped and twisted. "Let's just eat our food and we can talk," he continued. Each word sounded like he was either going to start laughing or crying. I lifted my arm and pointed towards my bedroom, telling him that we can eat in there. His grin bore his fangs and he walked over to me. When I thought he might drag me over, he instead grabbed my crutches and pulled my phone away from me. I had no intention to fight him on that. Living alone as I do, being a girl like I am, my dad taught me many things. Two of them stuck with me more than anything else though. The first was that people can be horrible. Even though my body was weak and the man's assault had thrown me to the floor, it was nothing compared to what my old man would do to me. Watching the man turn his back to me, my food, means of mobility and cell phone in his hands, I remembered the second thing. Something I never hoped I would need to know. Yes, my daddy taught me people were terrible by being terrible. But he was also a cop who had seen much worse people than him, and he taught me, no matter how terrible a person is, they all get shot just the same. My fingers squeezed twice on the heavier than I remembered handgun. Two hard cracks echoed around my home, and the man stopped in his tracks. Patches of dark red painting around the holes in his light orange sweater. The bastard didn't even turn around to look at me. He just stood for a moment and ended up dropping to the floor. It took me a minute, but I was able to crawl over to my phone and ring the police. I wasn't worried about getting in trouble. They knew me pretty well. They were even happy to see me. After a car T-boned my cruiser and took me out of commission, I would get letters from the boys. My friend who had sent me the message that alerted me in the first place was the first to arrive on the scene. Then a few others got there and it was pretty standard from there on out. Statements and questions. I was just happy I wasn't the one who needed to do all the paperwork on this one. Once the individual was identified, pieces started to connect. Martha's and Marcus's case got fast-tracked and solved shortly after. This leg is still giving me a hard time, but it's getting better. I can walk without the crutches and I'm back to driving. I think I'll be doing a bit more of that from now on, and I certainly don't see myself using Doordash anytime soon. Be careful out there folks, and enjoy your food. I've been Doordash driving for a few months now, and I enjoy the freedom of not having a boss order me around. I can play whatever music I want in my car and take jobs I want and skip the ones that tip poorly. I'm not saving much due to gas cost, but I am saving, and I was enjoying seeing new places and meeting new people. That changed after I received a notification for a $150 paying delivery. Immediately, I swiped accept. and then pulled over to read it. I first expected this to be some out-of-state delivery to some rich individual longing for some Michelin-rated specialty. I regretted not checking the distance first, and after reading the address, I found out it was just a bit out in the sticks, but still very much worth the easy $150. I sighed with relief and pressed the GPS button to bring up the map to a restaurant named Denny's that I'd not previously heard of. The sun was setting early, as it does in October, and I had my lights on by the time I made it to the less populated corner of town where the restaurant was apparently located. Dinner brings the best tips, but I hate driving at night since it's harder to find restaurants without a boldly emblazoned logo lit up in neon. That, and I've always harboured some lurking fear of a delivery turned mugging, or worse, some gang-initiated killing. Rare as it is, it has happened. You have arrived at your destination. The soothing voice of the GPS alerted me. I slowed to a stop, confused. I was on a dark, residential street, no sign of a restaurant in sight. Where Denny's was supposed to be was a dark gap in between two homes. I checked it again, even typing the restaurant's name into maps outside of the delivery app, but nothing popped up. I realised then it might have been a glitch. In retrospect, $150 for a 30-minute delivery sounded too good to be true. I sighed and began searching the app for the troubleshooting menu when a loud slap on my passenger window caused me to jump in my skin. A man stood outside my car, his hand pressed against the pane. I rolled down the window only a crack, just enough to hear him. "You the delivery driver?" he asked, and my mouth went dry. I didn't want to say yes because the vision of a pistol pulled and a muzzle flash kept playing in my mind. But he seemed harmless enough, older too, mid-50s, receding hairline, thin frame, not quite the gang initiation type. I was fairly certain everyone knew that delivery drivers nowadays don't carry cash. "Yeah, I'm looking for Denny's restaurant. Is it near here?" The man just looked at me with a hollow stare before raising his other hand. The fear of an impending bullet to the brain immediately dissipated when I saw a large plastic bag. I sighed out in relief and lowered the window, accepting the delivery. It was large, much larger than I was used to delivering. I'd typically receive a styrofoam container or two, a drink as well, something like that. This plastic bag contained a stapled paper one filled out nearly to the top. I needed to use both hands to accept it. I placed the surprisingly heavy meal on the passenger seat, staring at it for a moment before looking up again. "Thank you." My words tapered off as I realised the man was already a few yards back. I watched him disappear into the shadow-filled gap between the houses. I have no idea where he was going or where he had come from. Dark curiosity led me back to the app to see what I was even delivering. My confusion only heightened when I read the order. Denny's. It simply said where cheeseburger, fries and the like would typically be listed for me to check off on pickup. Despite the questions that kept tugging at my resolve, $150 for this awkward delivery was the overpowering factor. I swiped the slide after pickup, bottom bar to continue the delivery. The GPS once again popped up, and I stared at the large green areas encompassing the pinpoint. My insides squirmed a bit at the revelation. The delivery address seemed to be dead in the middle of the woods. I shifted into drive and followed the directions onto the highway. The sun had fully set, but the tunes from the radio had kept me in good spirits. Few people were on the road, so I was making great time and could call it an early night after this gig. The miles counted down from 15 to 10 to 5. The off-ramp came into view, and the large pine trees on either side of the highway continued to darken the path as I merged onto smaller roads. With every mile further into the wilderness, my uneasiness grew. More than a few times, my eyes darted over to the suspicious double-bagged delivery in my seat. My heart raced as my mind played tricks on me in the shrouding darkness of the tall trees on either side. I did a double take when I thought I saw the bag rustle. Something within appeared to have moved. The last turn on the GPS signalled for me to take a left. It was a turn off of the paved asphalt road and onto a dirt road that cut into the woods. I slowed to a stop and double-checked the app, praying there was some sort of mistake. On occasion, the wrong address was listed. No luck, however. My destination was half a mile into the dense wall of pines. I took the turn and slowly drove into the dark tunnel, cutting through the arcing trees. I could barely see the sky through the dense canopy overhead, just darkness broken by the limb-like branches. With each rocking of the chassis and each bump in the narrow dirt road, that heavy bag on the passenger seat seemed to rustle. I fixed my eyes on the road, deciding not to look at it after I began to hear a faint noise emitting from the stapled inner bag, a noise that sounded like a faint wheezing. By the time I arrived at the destination, my knuckles were white from gripping the wheel so hard. I was sweating despite the autumn chill that had breached my car and clothing. This part of the woods seemed colder than any part of the drive by at least 10 degrees. I shifted into park and looked at the app screen, which was the only source of light aside from my headlights, which faded only a few meters out. The address was supposedly on the left and the instructions read, "Leave at door." There was no house in sight, however. It had to be a glitch of sorts. Above all else, I didn't want to leave the safety of my vehicle. This entire delivery had been all wrong. Something dreadful about it made me crave a shower. It made me want to run screaming from the situation I'd unknowingly gotten myself into. Crinkle. I saw the bag shift in my peripheral vision and I let out a yelp. Hurriedly opened the car door and got out, eager to distance myself with whatever was in that bag. I then navigated the menu of the app on my phone screen, seeking out the cancel order option. My score would go down, I'd miss out on the money, but I'd be able to get out of this strange gig that I wanted nothing more to do with. I was about to press confirm on the cancellation when I spotted the door. A few meters on my left, illuminated only faintly from the light of my phone screen, stood a door. It looked ancient, its thick wooden beams bone white from petrification. The design was archaic, something that belonged on the side of a medieval European church. Black steel hinges and latches ornamented around it. But the most noticeable feature was the one it was missing. The door was housed in a frame of charred black beams, but aside from that, it wasn't attached to anything. I stared at the structure and felt my heartbeat quicken. Dread and curiosity battled within my scrambling mind as I tried to register what this door was and why it was out there. I took a few hesitant steps towards it and felt the hairs on my body rise. With every step towards the detached door, the temperature dropped. I stepped around the unnatural thing to peer behind it, and sure enough, there was nothing behind it but endless trunks of trees. I'd made it this far, and I just wanted to get my money and get out. With a few deep breaths, I returned to my car and opened the passenger door. With 2 hands, I lifted the heavy delivery, which shook in my shivering arms. It moved. Something gasped and gurgled from within, but I continued to carry the parcel over to the strange door. My teeth chattered from the chill as I placed the large bag on the dead leaves on the front of the door. I took a photo to verify the delivery, then swiped to complete it, and with that, I rushed back to my car and got inside as quickly as possible. I then heard it. The faint cries of an infant. I saw the bag shift and shake and something poking outward from the inside. I shifted into reverse and began to backtrack down the pitch black road into the heart of the woods, but not before I saw the door creak open. Not before I saw that rotted, black arm with long, dissected fingers reach out eagerly. I watched it yank that screeching delivery bag into the impossible space behind the door that should not exist.